Hey, okay.
Freedom Revamped. Time to get amped up. Turn up your radio podcast. This is the Let Loose anthem. Discover who you are. You perfect, got a purpose. Don't let them tell you nah. They nervous, they don't deserve it. Open your mind up and shine your light up. Illuminate, you will feel great. Freedom Revamped. Open your mind up and shine your light now. Don't hesitate, tune in today. Freedom Revamped. Freedom Revamped. Freedom Revamped. You could be living a free life. Internal freedom is your right, it's your life, yeah. Freedom Revamped.
Hello and welcome to the Freedom Revamped podcast. I am your host, DeShon, and what an exciting episode we have ahead. So today we are talking about breaking generational curses. Now, this is something so important in the African American community. And to join me in this conversation, I have Jade. Jade, say hello to everyone.
Hey, y'all.
Isn't she gorgeous? Okay, but aside from being gorgeous, she's about to come with all of the gems. Just wait. The conversation is getting ready to be so juicy, and I'm excited for it. So, as usual, we always want to ask our guests to share a little bit about who they are so that our listeners know who we're joining in conversation with. So, Jade, share a little bit with our listeners about who you are and what it is you do.
Okay, so my name is Jade, obviously. Professionally, I am a business and marketing analyst for a home decor company. But, you know, in real life, I'm a stylist and a creative director. Eventually, that'll be, you know, my full time, but you know, we got to make something shape with this 9 to 5 first. But yeah, I'm naturally a creative, so I'm excited to talk to y'all.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to have you. So per usual, the first thing we always kick every episode off with is asking our guests how they define freedom. With freedom being at the focal point of our platform, we want to know, what does freedom mean to you?
Freedom for me is literally just being able to live on my own terms, especially as a young Black woman, because obviously that hasn't always been the case, you know? So for me, freedom is being able to little stuff, wear my hair the way I want, wear my nails the way I want, you know, little stuff like that. Speak when I want to speak. If I don't want to speak, I don't have to speak. Move how I want to move. Leave when I want to leave, you know? So that's freedom to me.
Absolutely. And you sound free in the declaration of that. So I love that. But since you sound so free, I'm almost certain that you're practicing freedom. And our founder, Kourtney, came up with this concept of practicing freedom. She thinks that freedom is not just a destination that we reach, but it's something that we have to practice on a regular basis. So how do you practice freedom?
I've practiced freedom by getting degrees, by working hard daily, by living a life of luxury, by, you know, and when I say luxury, not just like buying unnecessary stuff or buying expensive stuff, literally luxury, like for me, getting my groceries delivered to my front door, little stuff to make my life easier. So that's how I'm practicing freedom at this point in my life.
Awesome. Well, Jade, without further ado, I am super excited to jump right into today's conversation of breaking generational curses. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is something that plagues the African American community, but it's with my hope that after today's conversation, we can generate more questions that others might have or answer questions others might have, and maybe spark a conversation within our community so that we can push past some of these stereotypical generational curses. So, without further ado, my first question that I will answer with you is, what are some examples of generational curses?
You know, and simple stuff, especially, you know, in the Black community, broken families, financial ignorance. What else? Broken families. I feel like that's two of the main things in the Black community.
Absolutely. Other things that come to mind is like substance abuse. And it can be on a small scale or a large scale. Like it can go all the way as far as alcoholism, but it can go as small as, like I said, it's substance abuse. It's a very small thing, but it's something that a lot of us escape our problems with, and it's not healthy. So that's something to consider. Lack of mental health.
That one real.
Is so important. And I think that that's a big thing that we experience. I think those are the main things. You brought up financial literacy, and that was one of my main answers when I thought about the question. I was like, that is something that I feel like I have to overcome within my family. So I definitely feel like those are some great examples.
Yeah.
So we talked about those as being examples of generational curses, but let's get a little bit more personal. What are some common ones that are in your own community?
Substance abuse. That's the main thing within my family and my community. Financial literacy, that's super, super huge. Luckily, I was blessed with a father who, when I was younger, I thought, oh my God, this man is so cheap. But now that I'm older, I get it. Like, it was like, and even now, I'm still like, Dad, like, how should I budget this? Or, should I buy you think this is a good investment? So I was blessed with parents that went ahead and broke that curse for me and my siblings. So that was a blessing in itself.
Absolutely. I think as far as my community, same thing with substance abuse, especially with our generation. I feel like that's something that is like plaguing media, whether it be music, whether it be entertainment and movies.
They promote it.
Yes, they promote it so much so that it almost becomes normalized. Mm-hmm. And it's sad because we're not teaching people to deal with their issues. We're teaching people to cover them up or to cope with them in a way that is only temporary.
Exactly.
The thing you brought up that I loved, and the way you phrased it originally, was financial ignorance. And I think that that's important to say, because it's not that we're choosing to lack financial literacy. It's just that we're ignorant to the things that
we never knew.
Exactly. Society keeps so much from us. There's things that we have no idea about. The older I get, and I've educated myself, but I have friends around me who are not abreast of the concept of like life insurance, or investing in a 401k when you're at a job, or whatever the case may be, or having a decent savings account, or making sure that you have a rainy day fund for your car or your home or health, whatever could come up. Life has so many unpredictable things. Those are the two things that are common within my community. If I had to get personal as far as like my home, I think I'd probably have to tap into like mental health, and not taking very good care of ourselves in that department, which I guess kind of focuses around self-care. I feel like that's something that we lack within my own community and my family, even like things that we need to take care of, like regular therapy sessions, maybe taking yoga, finding other outlets to expressing ourselves so that we don't like boil over, because past aggression is tough. And I think that that's like something that kind of stems from issues that our ancestors endured. Like, we weren't able to express ourselves emotionally.
Exactly.
So passive aggression is something that we took into this newer generation. We're carrying it on, and we're just like, oh, I'm not bothered, I'm unbothered. That's like a popular phrase, but sometimes we are bothered.
We are bothered. It's impossible to be unbothered. Like, we are always bothered.
And I think that's something that we have to talk about. But the more that we build up all of these fake concepts, and not even fake concepts, because for some people that might be true, but for those of us who are using it as a crutch, like, honestly, say you're bothered so that we can figure out how that you cannot be bothered later, or that make adjustments to whatever's going on, or we can address the person who might be bothering you, or whatever the case may be. But to say you're unbothered and then go home and be upset or chatting about it with your friends later, I'm like, I don't know, you might be bothered. You might be a little bothered. So I think that that's some of the things that I'm dealing with in my community.
I think that's good that you said about the mental health thing, because I was maybe like September 2019, I was diagnosed as bipolar. And that obviously it was scary, super, super scary. And it was something that went on in my family for years. Mm. Like, I know family members that probably have bipolar, but it was nobody ever said anything about it. It was always, like, oh, like, they're a little off, they're a little crazy, they're a little this. So having that, like, put on me to, I guess you could say, break that generational curse, that's been crazy.
I can only imagine. I think it's kind of scary when you find out things about yourself or about people around you within your family, because for so often like I said, we try to ignore these things, or, you know, the Black family, pray about it. You okay? Nothing wrong with you.
Right, exactly.
There are these stigmas and these common phrases that we hear day in and day out within the Black community that are not always true. And I think for me, a lot of the things that I was dealing with, like when it came to depression and anxiety, I was thinking much like everyone else had told me, like, girl, you're going to be okay. You're just stressing over this one little situation. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, no, this is happening too frequently for it to just be a one situation. Right. And the more I tapped into it and did my research and then seeked out therapy and things like that, I'm like, okay, now I can identify my problem. Now I can work to fix it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the biggest thing that I heard within what you just said. You're saying, like, now I know that I have it. And although it was scary, I can work to break this. So right. I think when we identify these things, the better we can, you know, work to break these barriers for the future generations. Like, I don't want
my kids.
You know what I'm saying? My kids don't want to deal with this. My grandkids don't want to deal with this. So it's up to me to fix it now. So who would you say is responsible for breaking them, right? So you just said that you feel like you're responsible in this situation that you just recently incurred with finding out that you were bipolar. But when it comes to all of the generational curses that we expressed earlier, who do you think is responsible? Are we responsible once we know, or is it the responsibility of our parents to take responsibility for what they didn't do, or who takes responsibility for this?
It's us. Like, we have to, like, our parents, I mean, obviously, you know, they can still work towards it, but we're the ones that produce the next generation. Absolutely. We're the ones that are gonna, you know, directly affect the next generation. So we have to work on us. And I mean, obviously, we're not gonna be perfect. You know, our kids gonna have some mess with them too. It's something we still gonna pass down to our kids, regardless of how hard we work on ourselves. But it's our job, like, to even for like unforeseen stuff. Like, if you think back to like MLK, right? Like, he probably knew for a fact that he wouldn't live to see anything that he was working on. So I feel like me on a daily basis, that's what I kind of keep in mind. Like, I might not see the changes that I'm trying to make within myself and like within my community, all the stuff I'm trying to do. I might not see it, you know, go directly into effect, but my kids might, my grandkids might, my niece and nephew might, you know? So I think it has to be us.
Absolutely. And I'm the queen of taking responsibility. I make a mistake, I'm taking responsibility. And in situations like this, once I figure them out and I'm no longer ignorant to it, I have to take responsibility. So when it comes to like financial literacy, I know these things. So it's important that I share them and not keep it a secret. Like, I learned it, so share it with my friends, share it with my family, share it with my significant other, whatever the case may be, so that we can all work to build our community in a positive way. When I think about like taking on the responsibility, however, it is kind of mind-boggling. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm responsible not only for myself, but for those who come after me. And it's not as terrifying as it sounds, because a part of me is so excited to know that like I'm going to be able to make a difference for my children, for their children, for their friends, all those things, by just simply taking initiative in this space or taking responsibility in this space. So it's so important that we establish financial literacy programs. We establish good senses of self-care amongst our community. We teach people how to deal with their issues and not just to cope with their issues, so that we can be better overall. I think the more that we craft better individuals, they'll be able to operate better within society, and then society will thereon become better. So if we craft better people, then we'll automatically have a better society.
Exactly.
One of my good friends, Mariah, I love you, wherever you're watching. She wants to have a youth development center. And I remember talking to her about this concept and thinking like, that's where it starts. It starts with us and our youth. That's when we start to develop our morale and a good sense of who we may be, or we're starting to craft who we think we are as we're moving in toward adulthood. And if we could teach youth these things, financial literacy, mental health, self-care, up front, like if I would have learned those things when I was in grade school, I probably would not have different. You know what I'm saying? College would have been a different experience. Mm-hmm. Post-college would have been a different experience. Today would have been a different experience if I knew all of these things before. But these are things that I'm learning and coming into now at 27. And not that it's too late, but it's like, my goodness, like quality of life could have been so much better for me earlier. So moving forward, like we're talking about taking on the responsibility, but now we have to figure out what are some steps towards breaking these generational curses. So I would say that step one is probably identifying them. So what are some other steps you think toward breaking generational curses?
The first thing I did, like, so I'm like heavy on history, right? So I started looking into like my family history or whatever a few months ago. And so I ended up finding out that before, like with my dad's generation was only like 3 or 4 generations removed from slavery. So after I found that out, I'm like, looking into different stuff, and I ended up finding out my family used to own like a whole lot of land. So I'm like, okay, like what happened? So still looking into it. And, obviously Black people didn't have the same opportunities. We weren't able to make money to pay those taxes and to do X, Y, and Z. So just like most Black people whose family used to own land, it was taken by the government. So the first thing I did, I bought some land in my community, in my hometown. I bought some land. So I feel like little stuff like that, like it's going to make a huge difference in like 20 years or, 50, 100 years, because the goal is if I can, keep it up, if I can do X, Y, Z and continue adding on, I'll be able to pass that down. And then I have, I understand I have the financial literacy to be able to do X, Y, and Z. So hopefully I'll be able to pass that down, and we can maintain that land. So I feel like little stuff like that is what I'm trying to do to shake stuff off, make stuff better.
Absolutely. I think one thing that you're mentioning is taking initiative. Like you looked at the history, you saw what was going on, you took the first step and said, I'm buying land. And I think it's just taking initiative, making a step. Like we can't get anywhere if we don't take a step. Exactly. So like I said, for me, I think the first step is identifying it. Like now I know what the problem is. How do I fix it? Okay, well, if we're talking mental health, there are resources. So what do those resources look like? Are there things that I can afford? If I can't afford them, what are some resources that I can get for low cost or free? And then it's like, okay, therapist, let me try that out. If therapy works for me, great. If maybe I need to look into a psychologist and step above, whatever the case may be, or maybe I need to work on my spiritual life, whatever the case may be. I think it's just identifying it first and then figuring out what those solutions look like for you so that you can take on, like, perfect example. When you get on a plane, one of the things the flight attendants tell you, if a plane goes down and the oxygen bags drop, you put your first, and then you have the others. So I think in this situation, it's like, if we're talking about breaking these generational curses, we have to put our oxygen mask on first.
We got to save ourselves first.
Because if we don't, then we're out here gasping for air while yelling at others that they need to do this, they need to do that X, Y, Z. And I think that's what's been going on for some generations before we kind of pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps. So many generations are yelling. You know what I'm saying?
It's always been do as I say, not as I do.
Exactly. And that's the scary part. Like they're yelling at us with no oxygen mask and now we're both dying. And it's like, that's the scariest part about it, is having to break that, because even conversations I've had to have with my mom have been so tough, because it's like, I love you, I do, but I need you to realize that like your mental health needs to be a priority. Like you've been working, you're used to being independent or whatever the case may be, but like it's affecting your mental health. And like telling your parents they need therapy is not always well received. It's like, what you mean I need therapy? No, child, I'm all right. Yeah, you think, but mom, it's like, it's deeper than that. It's not that you can't function. Like a lot of people have mental conditions and function just fine. They call them functioning anxiety, functioning depression, or whatever the case may be, but that doesn't mean you're not suffering from something internally. So even in situations like that, sometimes it takes talking to the older generation so that they can recognize things, so that we can work as a team for the next generation.
And I think that us getting therapy, because I'm the same way, like I was on my parents, I was like, after I started therapy, I was like, yo, this is the best thing ever. And, also you realize that like some of the stuff that you never went through, right? But your parents went through, and then you realize like, dag, like I never experienced that, but because they experienced it, like it directly affects my life. Like I'm dealing with that stuff right now, like, so it's like different connections. But I also wholeheartedly believe, like, as much as I would love for my parents to do therapy one day, I'm sure they're not, because, they like we gonna pray about this thing, love God, and that's all fine and dandy. But I think I'm starting to realize that, like, as I'm getting therapy, they're getting therapy too. Like, I'm able to, like, I've never been able to communicate with my parents, never. But now, like, I can call my dad. I call my dad anytime. Like, my dad is like my best friend now, So it's like, it's been beautiful to be able to just like communicate with him and like see him get better and like ask him questions that would typically be uncomfortable, like about his past, about his childhood, stuff that I would probably be scared to ask, not because like, it's bad to ask, but in the Black family, we just don't be asking stuff. Like, we just mind our business, but it's been nice to mind their business too. So I think that essentially, like, us getting therapy, I think that's helping them too.
Absolutely. I think the more that we learn, we can help them too. Because like when we think about it being generational, that means that some of the things they went through, like you said, are trickling down and affecting us. So we can solve our issues. It's like, oh, hey, let me tell you about the fact that I just found out that we might have anxiety. Here's why. We do the same thing. You're doing the same thing. I'm like always making yourself busy, stressing yourself out. We need to slow down. Yeah. We need to try more self-care. We need to try yoga. We need to try mindfulness. We need to try self-awareness or whatever the case may be. And they're like, okay, it's not so bad. Like, I didn't realize that sometimes it just took trying, like you said, having those conversations with your dad, having those conversations with your mom, because they received it, right? So sometimes we're like, oh, I don't want to, like, this whole like parent to child dynamic is like, I don't want to question my parents, or I don't want to ourselves. But my mom received it very well when I spoke to her about some of the things that I was dealing with that I thought she might be dealing with as well. And she was like, well, okay, great. These are, we might need to be having these conversations more, because she was like, wow, I liked having this conversation with you and your brother and like seeing what it is I have issues with and seeing what it is you guys have issues with so we can work through them. So I think they're not always, brick walls when it comes to change. They want to see the next generation be well off as well. So that's why I mentioned earlier, I think it's so important that we team up with them, have the hard conversations so that we can work as a team to make sure the next generation doesn't have to go through the things we went through.
Right.
So we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but I just wanted to kind of dive a little bit deeper. Are there any generational curses that you've fallen victim to?
Wow. Yes. A lot. I think the main thing was the mental health thing. I've dealt with the symptoms my entire life, right? But it was probably like I was in like 7th grade and I went to the doctor and my doctor was like, well, I think she should, see a psychiatrist. And my grandma was like, no, we're going to pray about it and God going to do X, Y, and Z and this and the third. I went on to live a miserable life, probably from like middle school to high school until I got on depression meds. And then probably like a few years later, I was like, not even a few years later, I was like talking to my parents, talking to my friends, like, yo, like, I really feel like I have a lot of the symptoms, but, don't nobody want to hear that, like, I don't, like, oh my God, I got bipolar, am I crazy? No, like, you don't want to go to the doctor and hear like them formally say that.
Yeah.
So I was suffering bad. So it was either, okay, like, suck it up and hear it and get help, get meds, get therapy, get X, Y, Z, or you're gonna end up losing yourself. You're gonna die from this. So I had to go to the doctor, I had to get meds, I had to start therapy. I had to accept it. I had to start being open about it. But it was so amazing because my mom was like the coolest person ever about it. I call her and I'm like hollering, crying, like boohoo crying. And she's like, baby, like, this is just like diabetes. It's just like heart disease. It's the same thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. Like, you're going to be fine. You're going to get the meds. You're going to do therapy. And you're going to get through this just like everything else. So I think that was the first, I guess you can say, barrier for kind of breaking that curse, because now it's like I have a niece and nephew, and now it's like it's open communication as opposed to being, you telling us how you feel, you talking back. No, now my niece will tell you my feelings. You hurt my feelings. Yeah. I'm frustrated. I'm sad. I'm tired today. I don't feel like it, And I think that's that's been the first step, like I feel like that's been the first step for actually getting that together, breaking that curse.
Yeah, and I think that right there just tapped into something for me. I think we took a lot of, and this might be controversial to say, but I think we took a lot of things that happened within slavery into parenting within the Black community.
Girl, don't get me started on that.
Child, I think when I like had the epiphany, at first I was like, nah, we ain't doing that. And then I was like, well, why aren't we? That's the same thing, like breaking us down to the point of like, respect me. I say that it is what I say goes.
Exactly.
Or, whoopings, all those things. Like, don't get me wrong. I do what you want to do within your household. However, I think there are different ways in which we can communicate with children, because I think we think that they don't have wants, they don't have needs, they don't know what they want, they don't know what they need. And that's not fair. So I think it's one thing, like you said, to say like, if a kid is 4 or 5 and they tell me they're tired and they don't feel like doing something, I need to honor that, because it can be something deeper than just them needing a nap or whatever the case may be. And me saying, you need to do this, you need to get up, you need to play, or whatever the case may be, might be harming them.
And let's be real. I think that's the reason we have so many like indecisive, stressed out grown people, because we never made decisions. Like, absolutely. We didn't grow up making decisions, even from down to like what we were going to eat. We didn't have that option. It was, all right, this is what you're going to eat, or you SOL, sweetie.
Absolutely. And it's got to be communication, right? So it's okay. What are we going to eat tonight? You don't have to ask me, but it might be helpful to get my input. Because if I tell you I don't like something, I don't like it. Now, granted, if it's something that's good for me, because you got to be honest, sometimes kids are like, I don't want vegetables. Yeah. The things that are good for you, but it's not just saying you have to eat it. It's saying you have to eat it, and here's why. Share with that kid why it's important or what it's going to do positively for their body, so that they're like, oh yeah, I want to eat that. And even if they don't want to, at least now you've educated them on the reason why those things are important, as opposed to just telling them, what I say go, you're going to eat everything on the plate, or whatever the case may be. So I definitely feel like, now that I think about it, that's probably one of the biggest hurdles that we have to jump as a community, is breaking free of the effects of slavery that are still luring within our household, luring within our mental state and everything. Like, sometimes I don't feel like I deserve luxury, and I don't know why that is. And then I go out, or like, I might even, me and my friends, they laugh at me all the time, because I talk about when we go do things that are luxurious. I'm like, oh, like, we're doing Caucasian activities today, or whatever the case may be.
Like, why they gotta be white,
Well, why does that have to be white? Why can't it be a Black experience for me to go out and feel like I'm doing something that's lavish and that's luxurious? Like, I deserve to go spend $70 on a meal and then another $14 on a drink, or whatever the case may be, because I worked hard all week and I can splurge a little bit. And then sometimes when we're talking budget, maybe that's not an every week thing. Maybe that's a once a month thing, but whatever it is, that's self-care for me to have that moment of luxury and that feeling of being lavish for that one weekend, or whatever the case may be. So I think that as we move forward, I really want to charge us to identify the things that we see that are direct derivatives of slavery and tackle them. Like, we can get through this if we address them, but if we don't address them, then it's like, oh, just keep sweeping it under the rug year after year. Oh, that's not why we're doing those things. That's just how it works in the Black hole. That's just what a Black mama is. That's just what it means to be a Black father, or that's what it just means to be a parent and a child within a Black household, or whatever the case may be. We have to shape that differently, because I know how hard it was for me to have my mom tell me what I say goes and be like, well, I got questions. Like, okay, I get that, but why can't I go hang out with so-and-so? I don't like their parents. What are their parents doing that you don't like? Because I like Bethany and I want to go hang out with her, or whatever the case may be. Or I like Jasmine, I want to go hang out with her. Like, I need answers. So I think communication is going to be key as we move forward to breaking these generational curses. So this conversation has been awesome. But before we go, I would love to give our listeners a clear idea on how to identify generational curses that they might be experiencing. So we talked a little bit about how we figured ours out, but what are some just like generic ideas or concepts of how somebody can identify their generational curses?
I think that looking at patterns, like you said, like, how you observed your mom or whatever, and seeing, okay, she does the same thing as me. I think that looking at stuff that you and your parents do, or you and your cousins and your siblings and X, Y, and Z do. I think that all of that stuff go into play, you know?
Absolutely. I think it's also important to consider, like, because we've been talking a lot about like the family dynamic, but sometimes I feel like we ignore our social dynamics. Like what we see our friends do, we're like, oh, that's them, that ain't me. Or that's them, I would never do that. But we're allowing them to do that. We're allowing them to function like that. And that's something that we have to work on. Like, don't get me wrong, coming up in college, you know, I wasn't going to be the Debbie Downer, but everybody knew DeShon wasn't doing everything that everybody was doing. And that's just what it was. Like, oh, we're going to go do this. That's great. DeShon's going to have a couple of drinks and then she's going to be on her way, or whatever the case may be. And sometimes I was having more fun than others because at that time, you know, we're talking about a stressful time period for learning who they are and coming into adulthood, and then feeling like we have so much responsibility when in actuality we had not seen anything yet. But like all of the coping that we did in college and during our collegiate academic career, it's like when you think about that time frame alone, there were things that were going on that I wish I was like, hey, don't do that, when I saw my friends and stuff, or like, hey, you think you can handle that, but I don't think you can handle that. And it's not imposing on their lifestyle, because at the end of the day, they do get to make their own choices, but it's giving them an extra voice. Because sometimes if you don't hear a voice, you do things because you're like, nobody told me I couldn't. It's like, we've talked about this in a previous episode this season, thinking about like a hot stove. If nobody tells me that the stove is hot, I'm looking at the fire thinking it's pretty and I want to go touch it. But if I've already touched that fire and I know it's hot, it's up to me to be like, hey, I don't think you should do that, you know, or whatever the case may be. That's like one of the main things that's going to help change these generational curses, by not allowing people to do the things that we've been doing for years, that we've just been normalizing. Like, oh, just pray about it. Okay, great. We need to pray about it and we need to go to therapy.
Right.
Okay, we're going to be okay. No, we need to talk about this.
I think that in the same breath that we talk about, you know, identifying generational curses, I think that we also have to, like, you know, appreciate the generational blessings, you know, because the same way, obviously, you know, slavery was a horrible thing. And I don't even want to say but, because there's no but to that. That's it. But you also got to think about, like, the resilience of Black people, you know, like I said, I'm a history girl. Like, I'm like, you know, like, and this is the way my brain works on a daily basis. Like, I think back to, like, all the way from, like, them coming from Africa, right? Like, think about it, like, somebody from your bloodline had to survive coming months on a boat. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
They had to survive being segregated, you know? So I think that sometimes we, especially me, like, at some points of my life, I've been so focused on, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to make stuff better for this, I got to make stuff better for that, but without actually thinking about, like, the stuff that my great-great-great-grandmother did to make my life better, you know? And the sacrifices all of them made. So I think that the same way we try to, I think they go hand in hand, you know, like, you got to identify the blessings with the curses.
I totally agree. And I think that's one thing that we do have to celebrate. And, you know, in current times, we just celebrated Juneteenth on Saturday. And that's something that has been important to me as soon as I became aware of what it was and the significance of the day. And the older I got and, like, realized how insignificant it was to others, it was frustrating. I've always worked in corporate America and always felt like we were unappreciated. And then we get to days like that and it's like, oh, whatever. Or even with Martin Luther King Day, it's like, oh, we're working, or whatever the case may be. Like, it's those little things that, like, I didn't think people paid attention to, or they didn't understand why it was so important to us. But to think about that was the day in which we freed ourselves. We realized, wait a minute, we're no longer slaves. So if we take that same concept and put it into, like, today, once you think about generational curses and you've identified them and you start to work to fix them, there will be a day of liberation for you to say, oh my God, we're no longer a slave to this.
We're that gave me chills.
You know what I'm saying? It's when you look around and everybody's bank account is full and everybody's smiling and they mean it. And everybody feels good, looks good because we've done the work. And I think that that's the one thing that dang, I'm so emotional. But that's the one that's the one thing that I don't have any children yet, but I have godchildren. Mm-hmm. You mentioned having nieces and nephews, and I just look down at my godson and I look at the innocence. He has no idea what the world around him has, or what's going on. And like even last year, like early during 2020 and all of the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, and like having to get back out in the streets because it was just so much going on in the middle of a pandemic. And like, then I go see my godson and he's just like, hey, Titi. He has no idea like what's going on around him, but wanting to work effortlessly for him. Like I spent days in the streets. I spent time organizing with my friends or whatever, or finding ways to be supportive if there were situations that I couldn't be physically present for, because I care about the next generation. I care about my unborn child. I care about my brother who's 21, who is 6 foot, over 6 foot, and a Black man and has to go in and out of the home every day. And I'm like freaking out nervous, but I don't want him to live in fear. I want him to enjoy himself the same way I had the privilege of enjoying myself at 21 as a female. Right. So it's things like that that are so imperative when we talk about breaking these generational curses. And I'm so happy to have had this conversation with you, Jade, because you've been so open and so vulnerable about your experiences and what's important to you when it comes to generational curses. And I think that would truly be an inspiration to others who might be dealing with bipolar disorder, or who might be trying to figure out how to communicate with their parents, or whatever the case may be. So thank you so much for that.
No problem. Eventually we're gonna be, the ancestors. So we gotta
absolutely together. They're gonna be like back in the day, Jade was featured on Freedom Revamped. And here we go. Now I take that quote and I live by it. Whatever the case may be, we really are we're the next to hold the torch. We are. And we have to understand that, and we have to take that responsibility, because it's heavy. It's a heavy torch, but it's one that is going, like I said, it's going to feel so good when we get to the place of freedom, financially, mentally, spiritually. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about revamping freedom, finding ways to find freedom within our everyday lives in every way, for everybody. So I'm so excited to have had this conversation with you. And I want to thank you again, like I said, for your vulnerability today. So I'm going to leave everybody with this help work. Based on what Jay mentioned earlier, I think the first thing that we want to do this week is identify some generational curses. So pay attention to the patterns, whether it be with yourself, whether it be with your friends, whether it be with your family, significant others, whatever the case may be. Pay attention to those patterns, write those things down. Figure out solutions to those things, what resources you need to solve those things. If it's financial literacy, where are some areas in which I can become financial literate? If it's mental health, what are some therapists in my area that I can seek out so that I can get therapy? Whatever the case may be, this week, I encourage you to identify one or more generational curse that you are going to accept responsibility of breaking. So thank you again, Jay. But before we go, please let everybody know how they can follow you and how they can stay abreast of what it is you have going on.
Y'all follow me at Kels Gates on Instagram, KELSGATES.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Make sure you follow Jade and all that she has going on. Continue to support her in her journey toward freedom as she practices freedom each and every day. And as always, you all know what to do. Practice freedom. Bye.
Bye. Thank y'all.
Thanks so much, DeShon. Hey guys, welcome to the Illuminate segment. As you know, this segment is dedicated to our authors, entrepreneurs, artists, and we talk to them about their various ventures. I am super duper excited today because if you've been following our platform for a while, then you know we always talk with Maia St. Aude about She Talks movement, but today we are talking to her about another business venture she has, which is the Frst Year. So we're going to go ahead and bring Maia on.
Hey, everyone. Hi. What's going on?
Hey, girl. We are so excited to have you. And a few people might not actually know who you are if they are new to our platform and just have never come across yours. So before we get into everything, can you give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Maia St. I'm a 23-year-old activist, mental health advocate, podcast host, and speaker. Like she said, I do own founder and creator of She Talks movement, but I also have a second baby, which is the Frst Year. So I don't know if you want to kind of go take it away with there, but I don't like to give everything away in the bio because that does anyone justice.
So and our listeners know that it is tradition here at Freedom Revamped that we start off with asking you to define freedom. Now that might have changed since the last time we talked to you, so I have to ask you, like I ask everyone else, how do you define freedom?
Yeah. Okay. So, fun fact, I actually, because we've talked about this, about freedom, and I was like, for the last couple of days, like, what is freedom? Like, do I think, what it was when we last talked, like, and I literally was like up at night just thinking about it, believe it or not, like, what does freedom mean? What is it for me? And searching the internet, so many different things, right? And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the one person, the one thing that has the answer. So I went to the Bible. And Galatians 5:1. I really felt it kind of like in my spirit, like that is what freedom is this don't submit to slavery, right? It's Galatians 5:1. Again, I'm not going to quote it word for word, but I was like, okay, freedom is this idea of knowing and having this understanding that Jesus Christ, he died for our sins, and that we have this freedom to know and to understand who God is, who Jesus Christ is, but more importantly, to seek him and not be bonded to our sins and to this idea of slavery. So I think it's this idea of really understanding and unlocking new levels and releasing and this from this bondage from certain levels and sins specifically. So that to me is freedom, is just this release from sins. But I ultimately find it and root it in God and in Jesus Christ and how he died for us. So Galatians 5:1 is definitely helpful.
Guys, we're going to link that verse in our description. But now I want to move on to ask you, with that definition in mind, how do you practice freedom? And this is really the thing that for me changes, like, it can change every day. So how are you currently practicing freedom?
Seeking God. Yeah, that to me, because I realize my flesh will tell me to do one thing, but it's ultimately what does God want me to do? And understanding when I seek him, when I seek his word, when I seek his understanding, I feel so much peace and realizing I'm better able to rest, right? I'm a huge believer and an advocate of resting. But I sought him first and understood what it meant to rest and to really figure out what it means to like love myself as this whole person, this idea of self-care, right? And again, Western culture will do, put a word on it, but it's like the word has already said these things. Yeah. And so seeking him has been, okay, what does it mean to rest? What does it mean to take care of myself? What does it mean to be a woman of God and really practice freedom? So again, my for right now, like you said, in this season currently is seeking God and his word and what it means for me.
Y'all, I am always inspired. Every time I get to talk to Maia, I probably get on her nerves in real life. She doesn't have to tonight. But literally, you seek to inspire people, and that is exactly what you do. I feel like that's one of the many gifts that God has given to you, and sometimes it doesn't even seem like you're trying to. So I'm going to encourage you to continue listening to him and seeking him, because what you're doing is right now.
Thank you so much. Oh my God, that means everything to me.
So we're going to get into our illuminate portion of it. The first question I have for you is, what is the Frst Year?
Oh, okay. So the Frst Year is a creative management and brand development company for new creatives. So when I say new creatives, I'm talking about 1st to 5th year entrepreneurs and visionaries. I help them through innovative strategy. I used to do design, but right now it's innovative strategy. And our aim, our mission, our goal is to really build more sustainable legacy building brands brands that will outlast us, our human us, and really have a strong foundation to lay on. And so that is one of the things that I focus on, is how can more creatives build sustainable legacy building brands right out the gate of entrepreneurship, instead of waiting 5 years to even see some sort of revenue. And we also even define what wealth is for every single brand.
Okay. So this is actually something you recently launched. You've had She Talks movement for a bit longer than, well, a lot longer than you've had the Frst Year. So I want to ask, growing up, we're always like, I want to be this when I grow up, or I want to be that when I grow up. But did you always see yourself being a brand strategist or manager? And if you did not, then what kind of sparked you to want to start this?
Yeah. Simple answer is no. I did not see myself doing brand strategy specifically. I definitely did see myself managing brands. So I don't put this in there often, but Kourtney knows I do manage artists, and that is also under the umbrella of creatives. I always see myself managing artists. That's always been like my thing, but not the brand strategy. I, over time, realized the importance of having a solid idea of who you are. And oftentimes, again, as an artist, that you're the brand. So I realized that was what was missing, is that new creatives had so many questions, but no answers, or a direct place in which they can go to get the answers. And one of my biggest things is educating you to take the next step, right? My brand strategy is your foundation. Once you get to a new level of growing your business and scaling your business, I want you to be able to have the tools needed to get to that next level. But I'm helping people, again, right out the gate. You want to have a little bit of awareness of, who am I as this brand? Like, how do I position myself? Because I feel like it shouldn't take 5 years to make money. And I use myself as an example. I've made good money, and I just started, my social media page in April. I'm taking a break currently. It's June, but I've made good money, and that was just through word of mouth. And I want more of that for brands, and not having to always constantly, be doing so much work. And that's where that sustainability comes in.
Okay. That's amazing. Yeah, I remember when I, how Instagram does the based on people you follow. I actually think I found the page before you announced it on your other pages. And I was like, oh, you know what? I was like, should I ask? And I was like, nah, she's going to post it eventually. But so as an entrepreneur myself, I understand that it is very important that we name our brands in a way that it captures the essence of what we want our brands to stand for. So when I saw the Frst Year, I was like, how did you come up with this name? And more specifically, the spelling, because it's Frst. It's not like first, like First. So how did you decide on that name and then the spelling of it as well?
Good question. So actually, believe it or not, the Frst Year was supposed to be a podcast. I was not going to make it a business. Was not going to turn it into a business. It was supposed to be a podcast for us as new creatives to come together. And eventually one day I'm going to get to that. That's what it was just for new creatives to come together and ask those questions that maybe you didn't think about and maybe some other creative did. And so I wanted to talk to smaller creatives. I think oftentimes we hear bigger names like Amy Porterfield or Jenna, I think it's Jenna Kutcher. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, but all these bigger name people. And it's sometimes people want to be and want to hear from people that are on the same level or just a little bit about them. So it actually started out as a podcast. And I specifically said the Frst Year because I was in my first year of business. And I really wanted to speak to other people because I'm constantly surrounded by so many other entrepreneurs that were also in their first year. And I felt like we had a lot of questions that were not getting answered, or a lot of bigger creators were monetizing that and we didn't have the funds to do that. So I wanted to create that as a podcast, but eventually, came into a business as I helped one ministry grow and they're a brand to over 70,000 plus followers in less than a year. So I was like, you know what, like, let's make this a business. Let's do this. So that is something that I definitely, was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. Like, let's go for this. Let's just make it. And it was just like totally spur of the moment. Like, it wasn't anything special. But in terms of the name, girl, it ain't nothing special. I just like drop the I. Just do something different. But it's nothing too special. I wish it was a better story than that.
I mean, that was still a good story, though. We'll take that. We'll take that. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you, when I first discovered your other platform, She Talks Movement, someone had just simply reposted one of your graphics onto their story. And I was like at the beginning of getting ready to start Freedom Revamped. So I was like, I need feed inspiration. And that's what really drew me into you. Like, I didn't even read all of the posts or anything. I was like, the aesthetic of this feed is amazing. And I've seen you carry that over to your personal page as well as the one for the Frst Year. So can you tell us a little bit about your creative process? Because like, your graphics are so like simple, but they're still like, it makes you want to tune in to what Maia has going on. So tell us about that creative process.
Yeah, really great question. Pinterest. That's one of the greatest places I go to find inspiration. But also over time, and it's funny that you mentioned She Talks Movement, because if anyone knows like the OGs of She Talks Movement, it used to be pink and black. I don't even know where I got that from. First off, I don't own anything pink in my closet. Don't even like the color pink. Don't even know where that even came from, to be honest with you. But I mean, the evolution of She Talks Movement has changed and evolved, but it's been consistently like, okay, what's the theme at that time? And I've just kind of evolved it. And I feel like finally now I'm at this place that it's like so peaceful, it's so calming, and it's like I want people to feel that when they're on the page. And I started to realize, again, going from pink to black, and I think at one point it was like orange. I don't even know. Cause I believe in testing things out. You don't have to always stay the same. I don't really believe in that. I'm not a huge fan of that. But I was like, what is my life? And what is the life that I want my ideal client to have? And it's ultimately this peace and this calming feeling when they come to the page. It's like no animosity. It's no hatred. I mean, I think I've gotten one hate comment and they DM me. Like, they never put it on a post. So we've never had a hate comment in over almost 2 years. July 1st will make 2 years. So it's a very inviting environment, and that is what I want. And right. So going to Pinterest to get that inspiration, I mean, I have several boards to do that. So that is one of my greatest things about my creative process is, one, go to Pinterest. 2, looking at my life. Anyone who knows me knows that my favorite color is black. Not a surprise. Not a surprise. I think more than like 70% of my closet is black. But I'm huge into like textures and things like that. So understanding like bringing my flair into different environments. And so that's what you'll kind of see on the Frst Year is blacks, whites, grays, and nudes, because one, that's me. And I found that a lot of times you can end up mixing and matching all of that over time. So I want to start off with something super basic, but Pinterest has been my creative hub for sure. Like, that is the first place I go if I need some sort of inspiration.
Pinterest is definitely a lifesaver. My tattoo board is becoming overwhelming.
Yes.
If y'all just see me, yes, I'll leave it at that.
Yes.
But you mentioned that within your business, the Frst Year, you want to help creatives within their first 5 years. But I want to talk to you about the next 5 to 10 years for your business. So where do you see it being in the next 5 to 10 years?
Good question. So for me, I do want to branch out to make this a world-renowned agency. So it would be a boutique agency. I would say, a little bigger than that. But I want to get into sports. So I will be getting my sports license once I become an attorney, to start helping sports to become a sports agent, and, contracting other sports agents as well, Black and brown ones. So that's one of the things, is we want to branch out into the sports world as well. Because anyone who knows me, knows that I will be owning, right, a top grossing NBA company. So I believe in, boots on the ground, understand what's going on with the players. So going to sports agency is one of the things, but also offering every single client and, you know, person who needs the assistance financial literacy. So all of my clients will understand their contracts, will understand what's going on. I tell all my clients that, like, you are not going to just sign this contract. You're going to understand this contract. And it's not because I want to burden you with every single verbiage, because I'm not going to do that. But I need you to understand when you're talking to me and you're talking to someone else, hey, that doesn't apply to me. Hey, that does apply to me, because my agent taught me that. And I learned that. I don't believe any one of my clients need to go out into the world, whether it's a contract or it's a project. Everything is clearly lined out. I even give out term sheets for when we're going through a brand strategy. These are the terms that we're going to talk about. So, hey, you have any questions, come to me. Let's talk about it. So financial literacy is huge for me, and offering that for music artists, for those sports clients, as well as for anyone who's offering brand strategy, because that's important, right? Like, that's an investment that you are making, and understanding how do you put your money and how do you invest your money. So it will be kind of a bigger boutique firm, but also a co-working place, right? So this is, again, a place that people can go, they can co-work, they can work there, but they can also get services such as financial literacy and education and how to invest their money. But my number one thing that I want to do is for all of my clients and for anyone who has the money, they will be able to have equity in the business. So no matter where the business goes, everyone will still have equity and a share of the company.
Well, I'm actually super excited because I see the work you put in, and I also see God's favor on you. A lot of people underestimate God's favor. So I feel that everything that you just spoke is going to happen probably even before the time that you imagine it to be.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So the last question I have for you, because a lot of people are going to see this and they're going to see your passion for what you do. So how can they book your services?
Yeah. So if the website's in a revamp right now, but if you head on over to my Instagram, which is the Frst Year, without the I, you click the link in my bio and you can sign up for the wait list. I will not be doing any more one-on-one brand strategy, and I will be completely offering courses. If you do want to do one-on-one services, it will be on like a case-by-case basis. And if you feel like it, I want to start making things more low cost and affordable for people. So I will be starting to offer courses that people can do self-paced. So if you click the link in my bio on my Instagram, or, feel free to send me an email, or a DM, even if it's on the She Talks to Me page, I will get back to you because I want to help you. And so a lot of good things are coming very soon, and I'm super excited for it.
Awesome. Well, it has been such a pleasure talking to you. As always, guys, be sure to check Maia out and all the things she has going on. Plug your Instagram really quickly so we can have that for the people.
Yeah, so it's the Frst Year. So TheFrstYear, the Frst Year.
All right, guys, that will also be in the description below. Be sure to follow Maia and stay abreast to all that she has going on. Like I said, it has been a pleasure having you, Maia. Thank you to everyone who has tuned in. And until next time, continue to practice freedom.
Bye.